52 BC. The Roman army was trapped in the heart of Gaul, no escape route, no reinforcements, and facing them, an enemy vastly superior in numbers. Normally, a commander in this situation would retreat, but Julius Caesar did something different. He did not just besiege the enemy, he besieged himself. He dug the earth, built walls, such walls that looked inward and outward. Rome was caught between two enemies. A single mistake meant erasure from history. So why did Caesar deliberately trap himself? And how did this impossible wall win a war? If you love incredible true stories like this that change the course of history, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And now, a question for you. What made Rome an empire? The sword or the mind that built these walls? Write your answer in the comments. Let's discuss from within history together. 52 BC, Gaul, the highlands of Alesia. Rome was no longer advancing. Rome had been stopped. In the heart of Gaul, on enemy soil, something unprecedented was happening. The Republic, not yet an empire, was bleeding. Julius Caesar stood at the edge of everything he had built, not just geographically, politically, personally. This was not simply another campaign. This was survival. 8 years of Gallic wars, 8 years of conquest, diplomacy, betrayal, and blood. Caesar had subdued tribes, burned villages, crossed rivers that Romans thought were boundaries of the known world. He had made Gaul bow, or so he thought. But Rome does not forgive stagnation, and Caesar's enemies in the Senate, Cato, Pompey, the Old Guard, were sharpening their knives. They whispered in marble corridors. They wrote letters. They waited. Because if Caesar returned from Gaul without total victory, without undeniable triumph, he would be prosecuted, stripped of command, destroyed. There was no middle ground. Either he came back a conqueror or he did not come back at all. And now, in 52 BC, Gaul had risen. Not in scattered resistance, not in tribal skirmishes, but united under one man, Vercingetorix. The name means great king of warriors, and he lived up to it. Young, charismatic, brilliant, he did what no Gallic leader had done before. He united the tribes. Arverni, Aedui, Carnutes, dozens of clans who had spent centuries killing each other, now marched under one banner against Rome. This was not the Gaul Caesar had conquered. This was something new, something dangerous. Vercingetorix understood Roman tactics. He had served with Roman auxiliaries, learned their discipline, studied their weaknesses, and he knew the one thing that could break Rome: logistics. So he burned the earth, scorched earth policy. Every village that could supply Caesar's army, destroyed. Every grain store emptied and torched. Every bridge collapsed. He forced Caesar to stretch his supply lines across hostile territory, made every mile cost blood and time. And it worked. Caesar's legions were hungry, tired, far from home. The Gallic winter was brutal. Men froze in their tents. Desertions began. Morale cracked. Caesar needed a decisive victory. Not a skirmish, not a siege that dragged for months. A single crushing blow that would break Gallic resistance forever and give him the triumph he needed to return to Rome untouchable. But Vercingetorix was not giving him that chance. The Gaul retreated, avoided pitched battle, struck supply convoys, and vanished into forests. This was guerrilla warfare before the term existed. Caesar chased. He had to, because standing still meant starvation, meant losing the initiative, meant watching his political enemies in Rome declare him a failure. So when Vercingetorix made his move, retreating to the hilltop fortress of Alesia, Caesar followed. He had no choice. Alesia sat on a plateau, steep slopes on all sides, natural defenses that made frontal assault suicidal. Vercingetorix gathered his forces there, 80,000 warriors, well supplied, protected by geography itself. Caesar arrived with approximately 60,000 legionaries. He looked up at those walls, at that plateau, and he understood immediately. This was a trap. Not for Vercingetorix, for him. Because Vercingetorix was not hiding in Alesia out of fear. He was waiting for something Caesar's scouts were already reporting, a relief army. Gallic tribes from across the region were mobilizing, tens of thousands. Some reports said 250,000. They were coming to Alesia to crush Caesar between hammer and anvil. The Romans would be caught between the fortress garrison and the relief force, surrounded, annihilated. Any sane commander would retreat, abandon the siege, withdraw to defensible positions, preserve the army, live to fight another day. But Caesar was not sane. Or perhaps he was too sane, too aware of what waited for him in Rome if he returned without total victory. He called his engineers, his centurions, his most trusted officers, and he gave an order that made them question whether their commander had lost his mind. We will build a wall. Not unusual. Sieges required walls, circumvallation surrounding the enemy fortress to starve them out, standard Roman procedure. But Caesar was not finished. And then we will build another wall behind us, facing outward. Silence, complete silence in that command tent. Facing outward, sir? Yes, to hold off the relief army when it comes. One officer, history does not record his name, spoke carefully. General, that would mean we are trapped between two enemies. If either wall breaks, then we die. Caesar's voice was flat, matter of fact. But if we retreat, we die politically, and Rome loses Gaul. So we build both walls. We trap them, and we trap ourselves, and we hold. This was madness. This was genius. This was desperation disguised as strategy. But it was also engineering on a scale never attempted in military history. Because these would not be simple wooden barriers. Caesar was planning something enormous, something that would require every legionary to become a laborer, something that would test Roman discipline to its absolute breaking point. The impossible wall was about to be born. The engineers spread the maps on wooden tables outside Caesar's tent, crude sketches of terrain, elevation markers, stream locations. The plateau of Alesia looming in the center like a fortress built by gods, not men. "How long?" Caesar asked. The chief engineer, a grizzled veteran named Mamurra, did not answer immediately. He measured distances with calipers, calculated slopes. His fingers moved across the parchment like a man trying to solve an impossible equation. To surround Alesia completely, inner wall, roughly 15 kilometers. And the outer wall? Mamurra's jaw tightened. To create defensive perimeter against relief army from all directions, 21 kilometers, minimum. Silence. 36 kilometers of fortification in enemy territory, with limited supplies, while surrounded by hostiles. One of the junior officers laughed, not from humor, from disbelief. "That is, sir, that is more fortification than exists in Rome itself." "Rome was not built in a month," Caesar replied. "We have less time." "How long, Mamurra?" The engineer looked at his commander, saw no hesitation there, no doubt, only cold mathematical certainty that this was the only move left. 6 weeks, if nothing goes wrong, if the weather holds, if we work every man to collapse every day. You have 4. "Sir, 4 weeks. The relief army is mobilizing now. Intelligence says they will arrive in 30 to 40 days. We need the walls finished before then, and we need them perfect." Perfect. The word hung in the air like a threat, because this was not just about building walls. This was about building two simultaneous siege works, each designed to resist a different enemy while maintaining an army between them. The inner wall had to contain 80,000 Gauls in Alesia. The outer wall had to repel 250,000, and both had to be impenetrable. Mamurra nodded slowly. He had served under Caesar for years, knew better than to argue when the general's mind was set. We will need to strip every forge, every lumber source, every quarry within 50 kilometers. Do it. And the men, sir, they are already exhausted from marching, from fighting. Now we are asking them to dig. They are legionaries. They know how to dig. Make them remember. This was Rome's secret weapon, not the gladius, not the pilum, the shovel. Roman soldiers were not just warriors, they were builders. Every legionary carried an entrenching tool, a dolabra, combination pickaxe and shovel. Every night on campaign, they built a fortified camp, ditch, rampart, palisade, discipline written in dirt and wood.
But this was different. This was not a temporary camp. This was permanent fortification. This was rewriting the landscape itself. The first stakes went into the ground the next morning. 60,000 men, divided into centuries, each century assigned a section. Competition built in. Romans loved competition. Which unit could dig fastest? Which could build straightest? Which could endure longest? The inner wall came first, circumvallatio, the wall facing Alesia. It had to follow the terrain, circle the entire plateau, climb hills, cross valleys, ford 2 rivers, and it had to be tall enough that Vercingetorix's warriors could not scale it easily, strong enough that battering rams would fail. The design was brutal in its simplicity and complexity. First, the ditch, 15 feet wide, 15 feet deep, thousands of cubic meters of earth, dug with picks, hauled with baskets, no machines, no pulleys, just backs and hands and the kind of exhaustion that makes men vomit. The dirt from the ditch became the rampart, piled behind, packed, shaped into a wall 12 feet high, sloped on the enemy side, vertical on the Roman side. On top of the rampart, palisade, sharpened wooden stakes driven into the earth, lashed together, creating a fence another 6 feet tall. Total height, 18 feet from ditch bottom to spike top. Every kilometer required tens of thousands of stakes. Every stake had to be cut, trimmed, sharpened. The forests around Alesia began to vanish. Trees fell by the hundreds. The sound of axes echoed day and night. But height was not enough. The Gauls were brave, desperate. They would try to cross. So Caesar ordered additional defenses. In front of the ditch, closer to Alesia, another ditch, smaller, but filled with water diverted from nearby streams, a moat, not deep enough to drown in, deep enough to slow attackers, to break momentum. And in front of that, the lilies, lilia, pits, hundreds of them, thousands, each 3 feet deep. At the bottom, a sharpened stake pointing upward. The pits arranged in staggered rows, then covered lightly with branches and dirt, camouflaged. A charging warrior would not see them, would step on false ground, would fall, would impale. The legionaries who dug these pits knew what they were creating, man-traps, death holes. Some refused at first. This was not honorable combat. Centurions corrected that thinking with vine staff across backs. You think the Gauls will fight honorably when they swarm these walls? You think they will ask permission before cutting your throat? Dig. They dug. And in front of the lilies, the final layer, stimuli, barbed stakes, wooden branches carved into hooks and spikes, embedded in the ground at angles, like iron caltrops, but wooden and larger, designed to shred legs, to tangle feet, to create chaos. From Alesia's walls, Vercingetorix watched this construction, and he understood. Rome was not just besieging him, Rome was building a killing field. But the Gauls had supplies, they had water from plateau springs, they could wait, and they knew the relief army was coming. So Vercingetorix sent riders at night through Roman lines before the walls were complete, messages to the tribes: "Hold, we are safe, come with everyone, crush them from without, while we attack from within." Caesar's scouts captured 2 of these riders. The messages were brought to the general's tent. He read them, showed no emotion, simply handed them to Mamurra. "This confirms timeline. Relief army is mobilizing. We need the outer wall, now." The outer wall, contra vallatio, the wall facing outward. This was even more insane than the inner wall, because the Romans did not know exactly where the relief army would attack from, so the wall had to defend all directions, a complete circuit, 21 kilometers. The same design: ditch, rampart, palisade, water obstacle, lilies, stimuli, but reversed, facing away from Alesia, protecting Rome's rear. The legionaries were already exhausted, already bleeding from blisters, already collapsing in their tents from 16-hour workdays.
Now they had to do it again, bigger. Some centurions reported murmuring in the ranks, not mutiny, not yet, but questions. Why are we building walls when we should be fighting? Why are we digging like slaves? Is Caesar afraid? The answer came from Caesar himself. He walked the construction lines daily, spoke to sentries, explained. "We are 10,000 miles from Rome. We have 60,000 men. They will have 300,000. If we fight them in open field, we die. If we retreat, Gaul remains unconquered, and we return to Rome as failures. But if we build these walls, if we turn this plateau into a prison and ourselves into its jailers, we control the battlefield. We decide when and where they die, not the other way." The murmuring stopped, not because the men were convinced, but because they understood there was no alternative. So they dug, and Rome transformed the landscape. 2 rings of fortification, concentric with the legions sandwiched between. It looked from above like a massive figure 8 of wood and earth, a geometric impossibility, a human anthill of organized violence. But walls alone would not hold, not against hundreds of thousands. Caesar needed towers. Every few hundred meters along both walls, wooden towers, 20 feet tall, platforms for archers and artillery, scorpions, bolt throwers, ballistae, stone launchers, each tower garrisoned by a conturbenium, 8 men, rotating shifts. Building these towers required even more lumber, more nails, more engineering precision, and still the work continued. 4 weeks. Mamurra had said 4 weeks was impossible, but legionaries do not understand impossible. They understand orders, and orders were clear: finish or die. By week 3, the walls were taking shape. 15 kilometers of inner fortification, 21 kilometers of outer. The landscape looked like the gods had carved geometry into Gaul. But problems emerged. The streams that fed the water ditches, Gauls from Alesia tried to dam them upstream. Roman patrols had to fight skirmishes just to protect water supply. Lumber was running out, forests were stripped bare. Legionaries marched 5 miles to find suitable trees. And men were breaking,
physically, mentally. Hands bled, backs spasmed. At night you could hear crying in the darkness, grown soldiers sobbing from exhaustion. But they did not stop, because stopping meant death, and death was preferable to shame. On day 27, a rider arrived from the north, scout, covered in dust and blood. Relief army, sighted, 70 kilometers away, moving toward Alesia. Caesar did not react, simply turned to Mamurra. Status: inner wall complete, outer wall 90%. You have 3 days. Sir, 3 days. They march at 20 kilometers per day. They will be here in 3 days. Finish. Those final 72 hours became legend in Roman military history. Legionaries worked through the night. Torches lit the construction sites. Men collapsed at their posts and were dragged away. Replacements stepped over them. On the final day, the last palisade stake was driven, the last tower completed, the last lily pit camouflaged, and from the north, dust clouds appeared on the horizon. The relief army was here. Rome was surrounded.
The relief army arrived like a storm, not all at once, in waves. Tribes from across Gaul, Belgae from the north, Aquitani from the southwest, Armoricans from the coast, each warband carrying its own banners, each chieftain commanding his own warriors, but all united under one purpose: destroy Rome. From the outer wall towers, Roman lookouts counted and kept counting and could not believe the numbers. 50,000. An hour later, 100,000. By sunset, we have stopped counting, sir. The horizon is covered. Caesar climbed a tower, looked north. What he saw was not an army, it was a migration, a sea of humanity. Campfires stretched for miles. The night sky glowed orange from their fires. Conservative estimates put the relief force at 240,000. Some ancient sources claimed twice that. The truth was irrelevant. There were too many to count, too many to fight, and they were not the only enemy. Inside Alesia, Vercingetorix watched the relief army arrive, saw the fires, heard the war horns echoing across the valley, and he smiled. 80,000 warriors in the fortress, 250,000 outside, and between them 60,000 Romans trapped in their own engineering masterpiece. The math was simple: 5-to-1 odds, potentially worse. That night, Vercingetorix sent signals, torches arranged in patterns on Alesia's walls, messages to the relief commanders: we are ready, attack together, crush them. Inside the Roman lines, between the two walls, legionaries prepared. They had built this prison. Now they would live or die in it. Centurions walked the ramparts, checked weapons, distributed rations, reduced now because supplies were dwindling. The outer wall had extended Roman supply lines to breaking point. "How long can we hold?" a junior officer asked his centurion. The centurion spat. "Long as we have to, until they break or we do." "And if both walls are attacked simultaneously?" The centurion looked at him. No answer needed. They both knew. If Vercingetorix attacked from inside, while the relief army attacked from outside, Rome would have to defend two fronts, split forces, spread thin. One wall would break, and when it did, the enemy would pour through, and 60,000 legionaries would be slaughtered in the gap between their own fortifications.
Caesar understood this, had understood it from the beginning. This strategy had one fatal flaw. It required perfection, perfect coordination, perfect discipline, perfect execution. One mistake, one section of wall overrun, one moment of panic, and the entire structure collapsed. That night, Caesar did not sleep.
walked the inner perimeter, then the outer, inspected every tower, every gate, spoke to sentries holding each section. "They will test us," he told them. "They will probe for weakness. Do not give them any. Hold your section. Trust the man beside you. Trust the walls you built. We did not dig this earth to surrender it." The soldiers listened. Some believed, some did not, but all obeyed, because that was Rome's true strength. Not walls, not weapons, discipline. The ability to stand in formation while the world ended around you, to hold the line when every instinct screamed run. Dawn came, the relief army stirred, war drums began. Low, rhythmic, the sound rolled across the valley like thunder. From Alesia's walls, Vercingetorix's warriors beat shields, responded, a conversation of violence about to begin, and in between, Rome waited. The first attack came at noon, not from the relief army, from Alesia. Vercingetorix wanted to test the inner wall, see if Roman construction matched Roman reputation. Gates opened, warriors poured out, thousands screaming, charging down the slopes toward the fortifications. They hit the stimuli first, the barbed stakes. Men stumbled, tripped, fell into the lilies, impaled themselves on hidden stakes. Screams filled the air, but they kept coming, jumped over the pits, reached the water ditch, tried to cross. Roman archers opened fire from the towers. Arrows fell like rain. The water ditch turned red. Some Gauls made it across, reached the main ditch, 15 feet deep. They tried to climb down and up the other side, carrying ladders, ropes, desperation. Roman pila rained down, heavy javelins punching through shields, through bodies. Men fell into the ditch, piled up, created ramps of corpses, and still they came. This was Gallic courage, suicidal, beautiful, terrifying. But courage without discipline breaks against organization. The centurions on the inner wall did not panic, did not waver, rotated tired men with fresh, maintained formation, held. After 2 hours, Vercingetorix pulled his warriors back, not from defeat, from calculation. He was testing, learning, seeing where the wall was weakest. Casualties: Gauls, 3,000 dead. Romans, 47. But the real battle had not started yet. That night, the relief army moved.
Midnight. The relief army attacked without warning. No horns, no drums, just silence, then sudden violence. 100,000 warriors surging toward the outer wall in darkness. They had learned from Vercingetorix's daylight assault, learned what waited in front of the fortifications. So they came prepared, carrying fascines, bundles of sticks and branches to fill the ditches, carrying ladders, carrying grappling hooks, and most importantly, carrying torches. The first Romans knew of the attack was when the night horizon erupted in flame, thousands of torches moving like a river of fire toward their position. "Alarm! Outer wall! All sections!" Horns blasted. Legionaries scrambled from sleep, grabbed weapons, ran to positions in darkness. The coordination was chaos. This was not a daylight parade ground drill. This was stumbling through darkness between two walls while enemy war cries echoed from both directions. Because Vercingetorix heard the attack too and seized the opportunity. His gates opened. Warriors poured out again, attacking the inner wall. Same time, same moment. Rome was caught between hammer and anvil. Caesar stood in his command position, a raised platform near the center, between both walls. From here he could see both battles, could direct reserves, could watch his strategy either succeed or collapse. Reports flooded in, breathless centurions, contradicting information, panic barely controlled. "Outer wall, northern section, they are filling the ditches. Inner wall, western gate, heavy pressure, requesting reinforcements. Eastern tower reports ladders reaching the palisade." This was the moment Caesar had built toward, or built against.
the moment when two simultaneous attacks tested whether Roman discipline could hold. He sent runners, precise orders, 3rd cohort to outer wall north, 5th cohort to inner wall west, 2nd cohort remains reserve, do not commit yet. On the outer wall, legionaries faced an impossible sight. The darkness beyond their fortifications was alive, moving, screaming. Gauls threw fascines into the ditches, crude but effective, created crossing points. Behind them, thousands more warriors waited to surge across. Roman artillery fired blind into the darkness. Ballista stones crashed into masses of men. Scorpion bolts skewered 3 warriors at once, but there were too many targets, too much chaos. The Gauls reached the main ditch, started descending, climbing. Some fell into lily pits, screaming. Others made it across, reached the rampart base, threw up ladders. Legionaries on the wall used poles to push ladders away, used swords to hack at hands gripping the palisade edge, used rocks to crush skulls. This was not warfare. This was industrial slaughter, mechanical, exhausting, endless. One section of outer wall began to fail. Too many attackers, too few defenders. A ladder held. Gauls climbed, reached the top, began fighting on the rampart itself. If they established a foothold, if more followed, the wall would break. A centurion saw this, did not wait for orders, grabbed 20 men. With me! They charged the breach, shields locked, gladii out, crashed into the Gauls on the rampart. The fighting was too close for formations, just stabbing, shoving, bleeding. The centurion took a spear through the shoulder, kept fighting, pushed a Gaul off the wall, grabbed another, headbutted him, threw him down. His men followed his madness, matched his violence, cleared the rampart, pushed the ladder off, held. The centurion collapsed, bleeding. His men dragged him back. Another centurion took his place. The line held. Meanwhile, on the inner wall, Vercingetorix's attack was more organized, more tactical. He concentrated forces on one section, trying to overwhelm through sheer numbers. It nearly worked. The wall buckled. Romans fell back from the palisade edge. Gauls gained the rampart top. Caesar saw this from his platform, made the hardest decision. Commit 2nd cohort, inner wall, now. His reserve, his safety net, gone. The fresh cohort hit the breach like a hammer, drove the Gauls back, retook the rampart, stabilized the line. But now Caesar had no reserves left. Every man was committed. If another section broke, there was nothing left to stop it. The night attacks continued for 3 more hours, wave after wave, testing, probing, dying. Then suddenly, silence. The relief army pulled back, disappeared into darkness. Vercingetorix's warriors retreated into Alesia. Dawn revealed the cost. Bodies piled against both walls, Roman and Gaul mixed together in death. Casualty count: Gauls 12,000, Romans 800. The walls had held, barely, but everyone knew this was just the beginning.
3 weeks into the siege, a different enemy appeared. Not warriors, hunger. Inside Alesia, Vercingetorix faced mathematics. 80,000 warriors, plus civilians, women, children, elderly. The fortress population swelled to over 100,000 mouths. Grain reserves, calculated for the garrison alone, were disappearing faster than anticipated. Rationing began, then stricter rationing, then desperation. Vercingetorix called his war council. The discussion was brutal. "We cannot feed everyone," his logistics officer stated flatly. "Current consumption rate gives us 2 weeks, maybe 3. "The relief army will break through before then," one chieftain argued. "And if they don't?" Silence. Vercingetorix made the decision that would haunt him. The non-combatants, women, children, elderly, send them out. Out where? Through the gates. Let the Romans deal with them. We cannot. It was pragmatic, cruel, necessary. The warriors needed food to fight. Civilians consumed food without contributing to defense. In siege logic, they were a liability. The next morning, Alesia's gates opened, but no warriors emerged. Instead, a different procession. Thousands of civilians, mostly women and children, walking slowly down the slopes toward Roman lines. Some carried infants, some helped elderly parents. All carried the same hope. The Romans would let them through, let them escape, show mercy. They were wrong. Caesar watched from his command post as the refugees approached the outer wall. Officers looked to him for orders. "Sir, they are non-combatants, women and children. Do we—" "Close the gates. No one passes." "Sir?" "You heard me. They do not cross. Turn them back." The officer's face went pale. "Sir, they will starve between the walls and the fortress. That is Vercingetorix's problem. He sent them out. He can take them back or watch them die. Either way weakens him." This was Caesar the general, not Caesar the politician. Cold calculation. The civilians were a weapon. If he let them through, Alesia's food lasted longer. If he refused, they consumed nothing and created psychological pressure on Vercingetorix. So the refugees reached the outer wall and found it closed. Roman soldiers, faces hard, spears pointed down, no passage. The civilians waited, called up in Gaulish, begged. Some held up children. Surely Romans would not condemn children. But Caesar's orders were absolute. The wall remained closed.
The refugees could not return to Alesia. Vercingetorix would not open his gates either. Caught between two walls. No food, no shelter, no hope. They camped in the no man's land, in the killing field between fortifications, surrounded by death traps and corpse-filled ditches. They drank from contaminated water, ate grass, ate nothing. Children cried, then stopped crying, then stopped moving. Legionaries on the walls watched this. Some turned away. Some refused guard duty on that section. Centurions had to enforce discipline with threats. "You think war is glorious?" One centurion spat at a young legionary who complained. "This is war. People die. Soldiers, civilians, doesn't matter. We hold this wall or we die. That is our job. Everything else is their problem." After a week, the civilian refugees began dying in numbers. Disease spread, dysentery. Bodies rotted in the sun. Vercingetorix could see this from Alesia's walls, his own people, dying meters away, and he could do nothing. Some warriors demanded he open the gates, take them back in. "They are our families. And if we take them back, we all starve together," Vercingetorix replied. "This is Rome's cruelty, not ours. Remember this when we break their walls." But morale inside Alesia crumbled. Warriors watched their children die outside, helpless. The psychological damage was worse than any Roman assault. Inside the Roman lines, conditions were also deteriorating. Not from starvation, supply lines still functioned, barely, but from exhaustion, constant alerts, constant repairs to the walls, constant skirmishing. Men slept in armor, ate while standing watch, bled from minor wounds that never healed because there was no rest. Disease began spreading in Roman camps, too. Close quarters, poor sanitation, stress weakening immune systems. Caesar enforced brutal discipline. Any man caught sleeping on watch, executed. Any man showing cowardice, decimation of his unit. Any man spreading defeatist talk, flogging. This was not Rome at its noblest. This was Rome surviving. And between the walls, the civilians continued dying, slowly, publicly, a monument to siege warfare's true cost.
By the end of week 4, nearly all the refugees were dead. The space between walls was now a graveyard. Bodies lay where they fell. No one buried them. No one could. Vercingetorix stopped looking at that section of wall. Caesar never looked away, wanted his men to see, to understand. This is what victory requires. This is what Rome demands. Both armies were now bleeding from within. The question was, who would break first?
Week 6. The relief army made its decision. No more probing, no more testing. Total assault. Their scouts had identified the weakest point in Rome's outer wall, the northwest section, where the fortifications climbed steep terrain, harder to build, harder to defend. The rampart was slightly lower there, the towers more spread out. That was where they would break through. The attack began before dawn, not for surprise. Caesar's sentries saw them massing, but to give themselves maximum daylight for what they knew would be a day-long slaughter. 60,000 warriors concentrated on a single kilometer of wall, the largest single assault of the entire siege. They came with everything: siege towers, crude but mobile, battering rams, thousands of ladders, shields locked overhead in testudo formations copied from Rome itself. And they came with fury. 6 weeks of stalemate, 6 weeks watching Romans hide behind wood and earth. Now they would drown those fortifications in blood. The assault hit like an avalanche. The sheer mass of humanity was overwhelming. They filled the ditches with fascines, with bodies, with whatever created passage. They threw up so many ladders simultaneously that Romans could not push them all away. Defenders fought mechanically: stab, push, throw, repeat. Arms burning, lungs screaming, no time to think, only react. One tower section collapsed under concentrated ram attack. Gauls poured through the gap in the palisade, began fighting on the rampart. Roman reserves rushed in, formed shield wall, pushed back, retook the position, but before they could secure it, another section failed, then another. The outer wall was fracturing. Caesar saw this from his command post, made instant calculation. If the outer wall broke completely, the relief army would flood through. 60,000 legionaries would be caught between them and Alesia, annihilated. He grabbed his personal cavalry guard, 400 Germanic horsemen, the only cavalry he had kept. "Mount up, we ride." His officers stared. "Sir, you cannot. The wall breaks or I break them. Those are our options." Caesar rode north, full gallop. His Germanic horsemen followed. Behind them he pulled every available reserve, 3 cohorts, 1,800 men, everything left. This was insane. A general does not personally lead charges, does not risk himself in melee, does not... But Caesar was not fighting by rules anymore. He was fighting to survive. They hit the Gallic rear. The relief army, focused entirely on the wall ahead, never saw the cavalry coming from behind. The impact was catastrophic. Germanic riders crashed into Gallic warriors like hammer into pottery, swords swinging, horses trampling, screaming chaos.
The Gauls turned, tried to form lines, but cavalry was already among them. Caesar himself, red cloak streaming, sword in hand, cutting through warriors like wheat. This was not the calculating politician of Rome. This was a warrior, brutal, efficient, desperate. The 3 cohorts following Caesar hit the confused Gallic mass, shields locked, moving like a machine, stabbing, advancing, creating panic. The Gallic assault on the wall faltered. Warriors turned to face this new threat, lost momentum, lost coordination. Roman defenders on the wall seized the moment, counterattacked, pushed Gauls off the rampart, retook breached sections. The battle became a swirling chaos. No formations, no tactics, just violence. And then, from Alesia, disaster. Vercingetorix saw the relief army fully committed, saw Caesar personally engaged on the outer wall, saw opportunity. He launched his own assault. Everything, every warrior, every reserve, the inner wall erupted in combat. Rome was now fighting both walls simultaneously with zero reserves. This was the nightmare scenario. Legionaries on the inner wall, already exhausted from weeks of siege, faced fresh, desperate warriors pouring from Alesia. The fighting was savage. Romans gave ground. The wall began to break. A messenger reached Caesar, screaming over battle noise. Inner wall failing, Alesia breakthrough imminent. Caesar looked around. He was in the middle of a cavalry melee, Germanic guards dying around him, relief army rallying. If he pulled back now, the outer wall would collapse. If he did not pull back, the inner wall would fall, and Vercingetorix would attack his rear. Either way, Rome died. He made a decision that historians would debate for 2,000 years. "Hold here," he told his cavalry commander. "I am going to the inner wall." "Sir, you will never make it through." Caesar did not answer, just spurred his horse, rode straight through enemy lines, his red cloak making him a target, swords and spears reaching for him. He should have died in that ride. He did not. Somehow, impossibly, Caesar reached the inner wall, jumped from his horse, grabbed a shield from a dead legionary, pushed into the fighting.
Caesar appeared on the inner wall like a ghost, covered in blood, not all his own, red cloak torn but still visible, and in his hand a common legionary's gladius. The defenders saw him, their general, fighting beside them, not commanding from safety, here, in the killing. It was not strategy, it was symbolism, and it worked. "Roma! Roma!" The chant began, spread along the wall. Men who were about to break suddenly found something deeper than exhaustion, pride, shame, refusal to fail while their commander bled beside them. The line stabilized, held, pushed back. Vercingetorix saw this from below, saw the momentum shift, saw his breakthrough evaporating, and he made his own desperate decision. Pull back, now, return to the fortress. His warriors retreated, not routed, organized withdrawal, back through Alesia's gates. Vercingetorix was conserving strength, waiting for the relief army to break the outer wall. Then he would attack again. But the relief army was also faltering. Caesar's cavalry strike had disrupted their assault. The Germanic riders, though outnumbered, were causing chaos in Gallic formations, and the 3 cohorts Caesar had brought were holding ground, barely. The Gallic commanders saw their advantage slipping, made the calculation, pulled back. Not surrender, repositioning. They would try again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, until Rome broke. Both attacks ceased. Silence fell across the battlefield, the kind of silence that comes after sustained violence. Ringing ears, ragged breathing, disbelief at survival. Caesar walked the inner wall, inspected damage, spoke to centurions. His voice was hoarse, calm. "Repair the breaches, double the watch, rotate exhausted units. We will be ready when they come again." The centurions nodded, but everyone knew the truth. There was nothing left to rotate. Every man was exhausted, wounded, running on willpower alone. That night, Caesar called his senior officers. The meeting was brutally honest. Supplies? 10 days, maybe 12 if we reduce rations again. Ammunition? Artillery stones nearly gone. Pila sufficient for one more major engagement. Casualties?
4,000 dead, 3,000 wounded too severely to fight. We have 53,000 effectives, if we count the walking wounded. Caesar absorbed this, did the math. The relief army still numbered over 200,000. Alesia still held 70,000 warriors. 4-to-1 odds. "They will attack again tomorrow," Caesar stated. "Concentrate on the same weak points, try to overwhelm through attrition." "Can we hold?" The question hung in the air. Everyone wanted Caesar to say yes, to guarantee victory, to be the confident general who always won. Instead, he was honest. "I don't know. If they coordinate perfectly, both walls simultaneously again, we cannot stop them. We don't have the numbers." Silence. "But neither do they know that," Caesar continued. "They see walls still standing, see bodies piled at our ramparts. They are bleeding worse than we are. The question is who breaks first, them or us?" One officer spoke carefully. "Sir, there is another option. We could attempt breakout, abandon the siege, fight our way north. Some of us might—" "No," Caesar's voice was iron. "We do not break. We do not run. We built these walls. We will hold them or die in them. There is no third option." The meeting ended. Officers returned to their positions. Left alone, Caesar allowed himself one moment of doubt. He stepped outside his tent, looked at the double walls his legions had built, 36 kilometers of fortification, the most ambitious military engineering in human history, built in 4 weeks by exhausted men in enemy territory. It should not have been possible, yet there it stood. "If we lose," he muttered to himself, "at least we lost doing something impossible." Dawn came. Sentries reported movement, both armies massing again. But something was different. The relief army was not positioning for assault. They were leaving? Scouts confirmed. Large sections of the relief force were packing camps, marching away. Not everyone, but enough. Tens of thousands. Tribes deciding this siege was costing too much. Better to return home, survive, fight another day. The relief army was fracturing. Vercingetorix watched this from Alesia, watched his salvation disappearing over the horizon, and knew he had lost.
The remaining relief forces launched one final attack, desperate, disorganized, more ritual than strategy. They knew they were beaten, but could not leave without trying. The assault lasted 3 hours, then collapsed. The survivors retreated, not regrouped, retreated, away from Alesia, away from Rome's impossible walls. Gone. Inside Alesia, food was gone, hope was gone. Warriors who had fought Rome for 8 years now faced a simple choice: die slowly from starvation or surrender. Vercingetorix called his final council. The conversation was short. "I will go to him," he said, "alone. Perhaps my life buys yours." His officers protested. "We can fight to the death, die as warriors." And achieve what? More corpses? No, this ends with me. The next morning, Alesia's gates opened. A single rider emerged. No armor, no weapons. Just a man on a horse, riding slowly toward the Roman lines. Vercingetorix. Caesar watched him approach, did not move, did not speak, simply waited. The Gaul reached the outer wall, dismounted, walked through the gates Romans opened for him. Walked between the double fortifications, walls he had tried for 6 weeks to break, walls built specifically to trap him. He reached Caesar's command platform. The 2 men who had fought the most brilliant siege in military history stood facing each other. Vercingetorix removed his sword belt, laid it at Caesar's feet, then his torque, the golden neck ring of Gallic nobility, then knelt. No words, no speeches, just submission. Caesar looked down at him, this man who had united Gaul, who had burned his own country to stop Rome, who had nearly won. "Take him," Caesar ordered. "Chain him. He will walk in my triumph." Vercingetorix was led away. He would spend 6 years in a Roman prison, then be strangled during Caesar's triumph parade. Public execution. Entertainment. Alesia's garrison surrendered. 80,000 warriors laid down weapons. Caesar sold most into slavery, distributed them among his legions as rewards, made them property. Gaul was finished. The rebellion broken, not by superior numbers, not by tactical genius, by walls, by engineering, by the simple fact that Rome could build impossible things and defend them. The double fortifications at Alesia stood for weeks after the siege. Caesar kept them intact, wanted every Gaul to see, to understand, this is what Rome can do. This is what happens when you resist.
Eventually, the walls were dismantled, wood salvaged, ditches filled. Nature reclaimed the scarred earth, but the memory remained. Caesar returned to Rome a hero, used his Gallic triumph to launch into civil war, crossed the Rubicon, became dictator. The path to empire began at Alesia's walls. But the true legacy was not political, it was philosophical. Alesia proved that warfare was not just courage and swords, it was mathematics, engineering, logistics. The Romans who won were not better warriors than the Gauls, they were better at turning dirt into death. Every military engineer for the next 2,000 years studied Alesia. The double fortification became doctrine. The idea that you could besiege a fortress while simultaneously defending against relief, revolutionary. Napoleon studied it. Von Moltke studied it. Modern siege warfare traces directly back to Caesar's insane decision to trap himself. And the question we asked at the beginning finds its answer. What made Rome an empire? The sword or the mind that built the walls? Both. But the walls came first. Because courage is common, bravery exists in every culture. Every army has warriors willing to die. But the discipline to dig when exhausted, to build when surrounded, to turn defensive weakness into geometric advantage, that was Rome. The legionaries who built Alesia's walls were not remembered individually. No monuments, no statues, just names in casualty lists. But they changed history more than any battle, because they proved that human will, properly organized, could reshape reality itself, could turn impossible into inevitable, could trap an entire nation inside geometry. 52 BC, Gaul, Alesia, where Rome built walls that faced both ways, where Caesar trapped himself to win, where engineering became empire. The walls are gone now, eroded, reclaimed, but if you visit Alesia today, you can still trace their outline, still see the ridges where ramparts stood, still walk the circuit Caesar's legions built in 4 weeks. 36 kilometers of impossibility, still visible, still teaching, still whispering, Rome did not conquer with swords alone. Rome conquered with shovels, and that made all the difference.